Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm going to do this in two sections. I'm going to do sort of just a, kind of go over what I'm going to cover, and I'm going to actually physically do it on set. So I'll have two opportunities for you guys to ask questions about what you might have seen or what, the gear or the settings. I'll go over that kind of as I go, but if I do forget something, just ask me and I'll be sure and cover it. So thank you all for coming. Did you guys all eat before you came? Okay. That's a good thing. I haven't eaten yet. I had a little bite of a sandwich, but I've already seen all these images before, so it's nothing new. So what I'm going to discuss today is natural light photography, but then bringing the kind of the science and the technique behind natural light photography to these LED units that I use constantly on set, and kind of how I get a natural light look using LED lights. So I'm going to kind of go over my background a little bit. I used to be a chef. This is kind of how I got into photography to begin with, or food photography. I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, and then worked at some restaurants, Restaurant Danielle and Le Cirque, and kind of worked my way up the food chain, no pun intended, of these restaurants. Became a private chef, and then when I was a private chef, I worked and assisted with some photographers in San Francisco, and knew that's what I wanted to do for sure. I was a landscape photographer while I was a private chef, and the transition was swift and seamless. So I already kind of had an understanding of tilt-shift lenses, how to get sharpness, how to work in adverse conditions, and so the transition was really quick. So I had a studio in Portland, Oregon, and then moved up to Seattle a couple of years ago. And now we're going to be opening our new studio space in Seattle in the next 3 months. So we're really looking forward to that. And the gear we use is what I use on real shoots. Now, if you've seen my website, I do some splash work, some action shots. I use a strobe for those, but for anything else you see where it's just kind of a natural light, kind of still life look, it's all LED. I don't use natural light really for any of the shots that I do. And if I do, I'll supplement it. So I'll kind of go over that as well. So yeah, let's get started. How familiar are you? Some of you, I'm sure, are photographers. Some are amateurs, semi-pro, even pro. How many are just amateur photographers? Okay. How many want to pursue food photography as a potential? Okay. I mean, learning food, I learned how to shoot food by watching sports photographers and by watching landscape photographers and not many food photographers. It's good to know the skills, so I'm going to go over those. But in order to kind of create your own style, it's a really good opportunity to kind of watch what other photographers do and how they approach it, and then bring that to a different discipline. And you'll kind of see just from doing that you'll kind of forge your own style. And I shoot with I kind of shoot food like an athlete. I do a lot of edge lighting just so it comes across and makes it really dramatic and really intense. But as far as camera operations, I shoot with a D800E, not for any particular reason. I'm not a gear freak. I don't go crazy over gear, but I like a good sensor. So if a camera has enough resolution for what your clients are asking for, then I feel you've achieved what you're trying to do. All I care about is what's behind the lens and what's capturing. I use all manual settings. I happen to like the Nikon. I've just gotten used to it over time. A lot of my friends shoot Canon. I'll shoot medium format when I need something really large, but only if I have to. Occasionally those systems can be a little slow on the trigger. We had to shoot a big billboard for a milk company up in Canada, and the resolution had to be, it was a viewing distance of like 5 feet, and it was 60 feet wide. So we needed that. But that's the only time I'll really delve into that. I love DSLRs. You can get them dirty, and I get these cameras dirty. There is sugar all over this camera. And so I use the tilt shift lenses, the 45 and the 85. And that's it. That's all I use. I use the 50 if I'm shooting in a restaurant or in a really dark space. I'll use a 50 mil. The nifty 50, I think they still make it for, they still sell it for $100, the older version. But I love the 85-1.4, and I love a lot of the Canon lenses I really love. And they make really good tilt shifts as well. I find I don't actually use the shift or the tilt too often, but I know when I need it, and I need it. The tilt will just tilt the plane. I don't know if you're familiar with these kind of lenses, but they'll tilt the plane of focus to a very specific degree. So I can capture the top of this cereal bowl and nothing else will be in focus, just the top of that cereal bowl. I shoot with a very deep depth of field, like f/16, so it's rare that I really need that because it's just part of my style. A lot of people are shooting shallow depth of field for food, and I kind of just go the opposite of whatever, you know, most of the people are doing, if I find it fits within my style. But yeah, so the tilt shift lenses, they're really robust, and on the front of this, I have an adapter which holds a Lee, kind of the Lee hoods. I don't know what they're called. I know they sell them here, but they're just the hoods that kind of hold the filters. It's a bellows hood. It's not an actual bellows system, but it accordions out. And it allows me to put, the bellows allows me to control any light spill that goes on, and has the double duty of allowing me to put a polarizing filter. And when I'm doing splash work, it also allows me to have just kind of a clear filter, a completely neutral filter, just to protect the lens from all the splashes that go on, because stuff hits the camera all the time. And there's also a shift option, which I rarely use in studio, but they're just gorgeous lenses because they have the circle of focus goes way wider than the actual sensor, so you're getting a really sharp image and a really clean image because it's kind of overkill for this. Just the amount of, so they're really great lenses. I'd recommend investing in just a couple of lenses to get started, and whatever lenses you're currently using. And as you form your style, your gear will start to shrink. I experiment with a lot of different types of gear, but what I'm using here is kind of what I use. And I'll kind of delve a little bit into my splash stuff, but that's not the core purpose of this. Some of that really gets expensive. But as far as f-stops go, I shoot f/16. I use light to kind of create depth as opposed to depth of field. I'll use steam. I have a fog machine that I use a lot just to kind of create a little bit of kind of a misty background in some of the shots. So there's ways to create depth and interest in an image without just using depth of field. I'll sometimes come across and use fingers, or I've even used an ice light just to block a little bit of light, just to add a little, just to add some interest in the background. I love taking these, and then I guess I should introduce my gear. These are the new Cinema LED lights from Westcott. They just recently came out. This is a 2x2 foot, and then I've got a 1x3 strip. But what I'm trying to show you is how this can be brought with you on location to just create a window light wherever you want it. And I'll go into the science behind why this is an excellent substitute for natural light. And that'll be coming up here in the slideshow. But yeah, this is the 2x2, and this comes right off, and it rolls up, and the frame breaks down, and then this diffusion material was placed, I think, at the optimal distance from the LED lights to create a very even tone. Because all this is really just a bunch of dots, and they're bright. Probably it's hard to look at directly. But yeah, so it's a really flat, gorgeous looking light. So next. I mean, if you know anything about photography, you've already gone over this. The exposure triangle with ISO, aperture, shutter speed. With these lights, they're so bright that you don't need anything above 100, or you can even go lower if you want. And the shutter speeds, you can't capture liquids splashing in perfect sharpness with this amount of light. It requires an extraordinary amount of light to get down to, I think it's 1/8,000th of a second is where I shoot, just to get perfectly sharp droplets and all that. But this is, I think, brighter than the natural light you'll see in a window. And I'll do something what I call doubling or even tripling up the daylight, and I'll kind of show you that technique here when I actually get on set. And I shoot everything in manual mode, really just ISO 100, usually f/16, and whatever exposure is called for. I don't use a light meter, and I just I've gotten used to where things are going to be just by looking at it. And so I urge you to really get comfortable with whatever your style is going to be, kind of work through that over, a few years and start to really refine your gear, and don't bring anything with you or use anything that you don't really need. It really helps you to kind of pare down and buy really nice gear that you know you're going to use that really affects your style and that's part of your style. If you shoot a shallow depth of field, get the 1.4, you know, fixed lenses, because I don't use the tilt as much as I used to. So those are great options too. But really kind of make your gear focused, and so you're not just overwhelmed by the amount of options, and really learn a lens and how it's going to look, so you can visualize it on set without even knowing what you're looking at. All right. I just said don't overcomplicate things. All right, next. So yeah, in regards to, has anyone seen my Kelby 1 training videos? I've got some food photography classes on there, and I kind of showcase, I go really in depth on a lot of the stuff that I'm covering here in those classes. It's just kelby1.com, and it's just a really extended long class. So all the stuff I go over today, I'll go into detail then. But one of the tricks is that since you can't capture sharp, crisp action at this light level, I sort of embrace it. So when you're creating steam, like if this were a bowl of oatmeal and there's steam coming off the oatmeal, you would need some sort of backlighting to capture the steam, and which you could do with relative ease with this. But if for some reason this isn't working for you, I actually created, since we're going to be shooting, let's say we're shooting, because I shoot a shallow or a deep depth of field. Let's say we're shooting f16 or f20. I'm at 0.4 of a second, but I could even go up, if I bring my ISO down, I can even get up to 2 seconds. So what I've done to create steam is actually taken like a white napkin, and if I'm shooting 2 to 4 seconds somewhere in there, I actually just take the napkin and just twist it behind the camera, and when you take a picture of it, it creates, let me go down, we go up here. It creates something like this. That smoke that you see back there was just a white napkin. And I just kind of twisted it, and that was a 4-second exposure. And I couldn't figure out, because it was side lit and really dramatic, I wasn't getting any smoke that was behind the whiskey. I don't know, can you make that out from this angle? Okay. So that was just a white napkin over time, just twisted throughout the scene, and it looks like smoke or steam. And if you're doing an overhead shot, you can't have backlighting on an overhead shot. So if you want steam to be, if you have a roast turkey, you need to utilize that method to actually capture some steam that way. So it's kind of a cool trick I stumbled upon just kind of experimenting. And yeah, and then at some point you'll just want to embrace the blur of natural light. I mean, it looks great to have some blur. I shoot waterfalls a lot, and a blurred waterfall is way more gorgeous, I think, than a really sharp one. So there's no reason to. I just like things sharp and crisp, and I have a lot of kind of the Ansel Adams thing where there's just tons of depth of field, sharpness, just this gorgeous frame. I bring a lot of that into food. So just kind of work within the constraints of what natural light is. And then when I set up a scene in a restaurant, or where if I'm on location, in the studio I have one of these camera stands, so I can just move stuff everywhere in a hurry, and it's really not a big deal. But if you're locked down on a tripod, and I use NovaFlex stuff. I like Really Right stuff as well, but I just got used to this. I love this L bracket because I can just hold the camera really. There goes the camera, and I can tuck a cloth in here because I'm always getting my camera dirty, and so it's just kind of a cool little unit. But what I'll do is I'll kind of check out a scene until I find a really good shot, because moving this tripod is kind of an annoying thing, and you don't want to have the center column up at all, because you're just kind of at a monopod at that point. It's not exactly the same thing, but you're still going to get more vibration. So I just took it out, and I love this tripod because this thing can go like 10 feet. So I can get a really cool overhead shot. But I'll kind of work the scene and then get it to where I want, and I'll bring up the tripod to the camera. Yeah, so I was asked why, or do I supplement natural light? And I use natural light, but mostly just as fill. When you use natural light and it's a sunny day out and the sky's blue, even if you don't have any direct sunlight coming in through the window, your highlights are going to be blue. And blue is kind of like the least, it's kind of known as the least appetizing color. It's not particularly, so I have to knock down the blue in Lightroom, or because there's very little blue in nature. Just like these natural Lucky Charms that I have here, the color blue just doesn't naturally appear anywhere. I'm joking, of course. But so I have to knock those down. So I'd have trouble with this, actually. So what I'll do is if I have a window, if I'm in a restaurant, I'll either put this up or I'll put the strip light up. And then occasionally, I will take an ice light, and then I'll actually, so I'll have the window light as a fill, so it'll be kind of this wrapping fill, and then I'll have this overwhelming the fill, or overwhelming the general fill of the light, which you see sometimes in fashion. You'll see a strobe kind of in place of the sun to kind of create the look of sun, but kind of acting as a shield as well. So you get this really nice contrasty look, but you have a little bit more control over it. But whenever I'm shooting bread or anything that has texture that I want to show off, I'll use the window light as a fill. This is a more dramatic angled main light, key light, and then I'll actually come in with an ice light and then add even more texture, because I'll put the barn doors on here and then close them down, because you can buy a barn door attachment for this. And you can get just this ray of light that comes right over any kind of, especially with ice cream, where you need all that texture. So you can come down and get really low. So you've got 3 lights working to your advantage, which I find really wonderful, because I can turn this down for the main light. I have complete control over how sharp or how intense that contrast is. And I just hold it and then take the shot. And if you're on location, these are invaluable. I can shoot the image that you saw right when we walked in of the fish. That was just an ice light. It was at the Spotted Pig restaurant in New York, and it was really crowded, and it was lunchtime, and there happened to be a plate. There were people dining to the left and right of me, and I had to get in with my camera between 2 people sitting having lunch, and then so I just wrapped the ice right behind it. There was a light coming in from a window right behind it, and then I just did a longer exposure. And without the ice light, it would have been nice, but it wouldn't have the glistening highlights that are pure white. It wouldn't have the same look. I would have to, and there's no way to add that later. There's no way to substitute the dramatic lighting that hits the fish and then glistens off of it. So this is a really good thing. You can get away with just an ice light in a restaurant shoot all day long. I've held this up next to beer bottles. Another interesting thing that I'll show you when I do the wine bottle or just the glass photography is that I'll cover this. There's a method that I learned from a photographer named Rob Grimm, who kind of went into cross polarization and how to put a polarizer on the front of your lens. And then if you have a polarizing gel on your light, you can actually put that on the front and kind of highlight the label and kind of add a little glow. But you're going to see that beauty dish or that light in the glass. And if you have a polarizing gel, if you twist the on-camera polarizer with the gelled light, you can make that highlight vanish completely. And I've taken that kind of a different, even further, and I'll actually purchase a gel, which you can purchase in sheets, cut it, and then tape it to one of my ice lights. So I always have an ice light with polarizing gel on it, so that when I tend to shoot with a polarizer on my camera at all times, even if I don't actually use it. I just will twist it to varying degrees to get rid of highlights here and there. But I can use an ice light, add a little glow to it, and knock it completely out in camera immediately right there. So that's a good thing to have. And you can, I have it attached at all times to one of my ice lights, but you can always just take it off and on. It's just, they're not that cheap. It's like $100 for just that. So you got to make the most of it for sure. Okay. Yeah, and so I kind of get creative. I use these fingers and scrims. I've got a whole collection of these dots. These add up. These aren't cheap. And you can get away with using coat hanger and nylon, and I use cinefoil a lot because you can just stand up. Do you guys know what cinefoil is? It's kind of like just black foil. It's a really matte black, and you can just tear it off and then use it to, I mean, it has tons of different uses. But I did end up purchasing these because I just like the durability of them, and I can predict how they're going to react. You can actually use this as diffusion, or you can actually use this as a fill, which I'm doing now. And these actually go into, you can actually purchase holders, and I have no idea what these are called, because I actually had to really track these down. They're just like French flag, Matthews French flag adapters. And you can find them on Amazon. You can use, I've seen people use Post-it notes and just fold them up like little flags and attach them to things. And what you're doing there is just controlling little splashes of light. Because once you take your first shot, you'll see stuff that's reflecting to this. That's, you know, so you want to control the light from there and sort of rein it in. But you don't have to purchase tons of gear to get it to happen. You can use Ziploc bags, regular tinfoil. You can use, I've used silver cards and gold cards that you can get from pretty much any craft store and kind of cut them the same size as this bottle and just rotate it 45 degrees to the light, and it'll reflect through the glass and give you that really cool glowing look. But it's really, the possibilities are endless in regards to light modifiers. It can be anything, as long as it doesn't create a color cast that's unfavorable. So you asked, do I incorporate strobes with, so I use Broncolor stuff, which adds up in a hurry. It's really expensive, but I've gotten some older packs over time, and this is a shot. These are shots that were a combination, they're composites, but they're a combination of natural light and strobe. And the reason, I like natural light, and I like the feel of natural light. So what I did is I just locked the camera down on a tripod, I dragged the shutter, I don't know what the exposure time on this was, but it just allowed sort of a natural, there's window light coming in from the left. So it allowed the light to kind of naturally blend into the background. And then I shot the actual pores using a strobe, which really knocked out the background quite a bit. Because anytime you have a strobe light, the comparison between the light hitting the glass and the background is going to really just dramatically increase. This was almost black when I shot the splash stuff, which is great because you can go into Photoshop and just do a luminosity-based layer. You can do a screen, I think it's screen mode, blending mode. And it just looks more natural than trying to shoot this in a studio and then shoot this background, because there are little nuances in the light that kind of bleed through a little bit. And I'll take some of the natural light look of this glass, blend it back in. So I do a lot of composites for advertising, but I'm really strict about making sure that we at least get one image that's almost complete, and then shoot additional images for compositing later that sort of add to the feel of it. I don't want it to look like a composite, and we've gotten just a lot better. My digital team's gotten a lot better over time. But I do all the post-production myself, the nitty-gritty stuff, because we're just really in tune. You have to be really in tune with the details, because when you see a lot of, every color affects everything else. Like you see yogurt shots with spirals and fruit going everywhere, but you never see the color cast that like a raspberry would make on milk that's right next to. That's always missing in those composites for some reason. So we look at those details when we're shooting. So we try and get it all in one shot as best we can, and then add pieces here and there. So this is a combination of natural light and strobe. So it's kind of a unique look. It kind of looks like natural light with the drama of the splashes. All right. I just went over that. This is also the spotted pig. This is the hamburger. It's quite delicious. Now the reason I love these things is because when in the studio I'll use them, but on location they're a dream. You can't typically bring these massive strobe packs and kind of be able to work around a busy kitchen. It depends what the environment is. But this again was just a nice light. This is actually 3 different shots. I actually grabbed a chopstick from the kitchen. And when I poured the beer, I used the chopstick to create sort of that perfect foam that you'll get when you stir. Wood reacts with beer for some reason, and it creates this perfect foam. So I grabbed a shot of that while I had the ice light on the left-hand side creating these. The natural light did this side, but I used the ice light to create that highlight on the left side. And I just stood it up. And it didn't have the polarizing gel on it. But the natural light, because you can see a little bit of blueness in these highlights, a little bit of cold, and I don't mind it. I might have cleaned that up a little bit, but the light kind of came in through the French fries, hit the burger, so I didn't have a lot of work to do in that regard. All I really had to do was fill the front of the burger, which happened with the ice light just being over to the left a little bit. It sort of went across the front of the burger. So you want to get as few shots as possible. So if a light can do double duty without you having to bring it into Photoshop and start to layer the heck out of it, you're way better off. So yeah, And there was a gold card behind that beer. And the gold card was just taped. I had it in my bag, and I just took a wood block and just glued it to a cutout of a beer-shaped gold card. I didn't have to blend it out at all. It just happened to fit perfectly with that glass. All right. Yeah, so there's side lighting and backlighting. This is another shot from Atrium Dumbo and Dumbo. If you haven't been here, the food's spectacular. And this is an ice light on both ends, so this is a composited image, but this could have been gotten in one image. I was just kind of in a hurry. So the natural light, there was window light coming in, which created a lot of these highlights, but this ice light created the two edge lights that created what you see here, and I just did a white card for fill. But so if you just did a natural light shot, none of these dramatic lines would be here. It would just, in my mind, be a little more bland. I think it adds, there's always room for an improving in a light situation that you're in. So you can look for ways to kind of make it more dramatic. And then we're back to this guy. And this is the backlighting. And because I did have to bring down the blue because the natural light did kind of overshadow, because all I had was the ice light. So I did have to take out some of the blue and the highlights. But the ice light is the reason that these are here. These little speculars. And this is the one thing I do like about backlit images. It's not my traditional style for shooting, but it's very hard to get. That's why I love low light. That's why I love bringing light downward, because it just rakes across food and it really makes it shine and glisten, which is what you want. You want an appetite appeal with food. So with the quality of natural light, if you're just working off a window, you only have so many hours in the day. In the wintertime, not that many. So if you want to be shooting at night, I mean, these are just spectacular because you're locked down. You know exactly what to expect. I'll kind of go into the north-facing windows are good. I'll also make sure and turn off, if you're shooting in your house, turn off all extra lights. I know I forget it all the time. Even in the studio, we forget to dim the lights. We invested in those Philips Hue lights that change colors. So you can go to 5500 Kelvin, which I think is kind of what these are at, somewhere in there. So it never, even if we do forget to turn them off, it doesn't kill the scenario. But if you have incandescent lights anywhere you can start to run into color issues. So I'm going to touch on food styling. Do you guys have an interest in food styling? Yes. Is that something you'd like me to cover? Yes. Okay. I'm sort of, because I was a chef for almost 20 years, I trained myself as a food stylist because I wanted that to be part of my style, because how you style something is really kind of important. You work with food stylists, obviously, but on a lot of shoots, like packaging shoots, I'll do the styling myself. And especially with like the splash, the conceptual stuff, I have a food stylist, but mostly there to produce quantities of food or blend, because they know what I mean, a good food stylist is invaluable. And here in New York, you've got an amazing ice cream stylist, and there's stylists that specialize in just pizza or just ice cream, or, I mean, that's not all they do, but when you have a good one, you have a good one. It makes your life a lot easier. So if you have a food stylist in your neighborhood, in your area, who's up and coming or isn't as busy as some of them do get, work with one, because they'll make your photos a million times better in regards to food, especially if you're not a cook by nature. So I trained myself on how to do food styling, so that could be kind of a part of the style. And I'm not afraid to do food styling that's sort of kind of old school in nature, where, I mean, I'm not doing shortening for ice cream, but I am employing certain tricks. If it looks good, it is good. And I'm not going to just do it in a natural manner just for the sake of it. I'm going to make it look good. So I've got all kinds of stuff in my bag of tricks, but I use Doling spray. Just invest in a can of Doling spray if you're going to be a food photographer. You can spray it on spoons to make the reflections go away. Sorry. Doling spray. And it's made by Krylon. It's that right there. You can find it at any craft store. If I were to instruct you on what to purchase right out of the gate, definitely some kitchen bouquet. and a little goes a long way, but you can dilute it to make coffee, dilute it further to make iced tea or whiskey, and you also mix it. You mix this with just a touch of dish soap and a little bit of the bitters, and sometimes a little paprika or something. Everyone has their own mix, but to brush on chicken, like half-cooked chicken. So you have a half-cooked chicken, it's still plump, and this is one of the things that I always do. Every time I see a fully cooked chicken, I freak because it just wilts and it just looks terrible. But also I don't over shellac it either because it looks like it was just a prop or something. So there's a happy medium to be found. But if you mix just a little bit of dish soap and bitters and some of that bouquet together, it looks fantastic. I mean, you just brush that on the skin, and the soap helps it adhere to the fat on the skin. But dulling spray, you can spray it on anything that's shiny. I usually, when I shoot an apple, I'll always dull it down. They're just so waxed out, unless it's a natural apple. These you can actually purchase really close to here. I think they're Trengove Studios. They make fake ice, and I'll go to them in person because they make the fake acrylic ice that you see in kind of commercial whiskey shots. And I'll go pick out ones specifically that I think some just aren't that believable, but some are amazing. So you have to pick the right ones. But they make powdered ice, which you reconstitute with water, and you can kind of brush it on Coke bottles and some other stuff to kind of make it look cold, and it'll last all day on set. And even though we're shooting digital and it's fast medium, you still want, I mean, ice will melt in a heartbeat. So this is a really mandatory thing. Whereas I won't use a lot of fake prop stuff unless I really have to with digital, because you can shoot really fast. But this is one of those things that just melts immediately. And here's some of that acrylic ice there. This is hilarious. People get a kick out of this when they come into the studio. It's called Poop Freeze. And you can purchase this. It's expensive, $18 I think for a can. But you know when you turn the compressed air upside down, and you get that steam and then it emits that stuff that makes people cough. And this actually produces that steam intentionally in an upright position for a lot longer. And what this does is allows you to have ice cream on set, and you just spray it. And it was actually originally designed so if you're walking your dog and the dog does its business, I don't know if you have a holster for this or not, but like you take it out of your purse and spray the poop, freeze it. I guess I don't know why you would. It just makes it easier to pick up. I know they're going to quit making this because it's so ridiculous. So I want to buy them out because I love it it keeps ice cream cold on set, and you can also use it to create frost effects on surfaces like ice cream. It just creates frost for like 5 seconds, but it's enough to capture an image. It also creates, I'll show you a Coke image a little bit later that we did that employs Poop Freeze on 3 different levels. And I'll kind of go over, what else? Pardon?
Where do you buy it?
Online. I can only find it on Amazon. It was just, you just Google Poop Freeze. There's actually a really cool video on the website that shows you how the business is done. Yeah.
Yeah, is the name of it?
It's Poop Freeze. And there's a dog in there that says, just frost and toss. For dog, cat, and bird poop, and food photographers. And I'd recommend a steamer. That's always helpful for just creating real steam. Real steam looks the best. I know I did the smoke trick with a napkin, and in a pinch that works. Real steam, you can't beat it. You can't fake it either, really. Yeah, and so a good steamer with a lot of horsepower. Everything else is just kind of, this is a product that is poisonous. Sodium bisulfite, it's poisonous to some people. They have a big reaction to it. So just be careful when you can purchase this at most scientific stores, and you just put a teaspoon in a cup of water. And if you brush that on an apple, it'll stay unoxidized for 3 days. Like, it beats lemon juice any day of the week. However, it will eventually start to wilt the actual skin of fruits a lot, I've noticed. So you can't actually shoot it for 3 days. But if you brush that on a banana, it just stops everything in its tracks permanently, for a good amount of time at least.
Glycerin is another important one.
Yeah, glycerin, I don't use it as much. I mean, I know that I don't use it. One thing about glycerin is when you're, I use these I use these a lot, which are like needle droppers. They're glue applicators that you get at hobby stores. And I put a mixture of glycerin and water in there, but it'll clog it up pretty quickly. And it also, glycerin, if you zoom in on a picture of like a tomato where you've applied, on a hamburger where you've applied little dots of water, the actual color of the tomato will actually continue on with the bubble, and it'll look like a red droplet as opposed to water. It's kind of a weird look. On occasion, there's a place for it, like especially on beer bottles, or if you want to make things look. And yeah, so there's that. If you mix 50-50 water and glycerin, and also a pump. I have a handheld pump that just pumps. Like if you have a glass of beer, you can just get this and it'll pump all the beer out, so you can just put more beer back in and not move the glass. That's a handy thing to have. I got that at Home Depot. I don't know the make, and it's cheap. It's not like industrial grade, but it helps a lot in a pinch. How are we on time? Where are we at in the 2 hours? Hey, there's a clock. Perfect. Okay, I just want to at least have an hour for each. Okay. And so I can kind of go over this in a little bit more depth. We've got surf wax, soft surf wax, which I use to kind of coat beer bottles. I think it gives it the most realistic look of being really ice cold. And if you kind of warm it up with your hands and then rub the surf wax on a bottle and kind of rub it around, it'll give an amazingly impressive look about it. And if you brush a little bit of that powdered ice on it, and even do a little spritz of poop freeze, you've got yourself a cold looking bottle. Also a heat gun works really well with numerous things. I don't use it for melting chocolate, but I will use it for just kind of melting pats of butter or doing quick things on set. I use a straw for melting chocolate with breath. And it's really gentle, and if you have a really thick straw, you can get chocolate to really, without making it look like it's been blowtorched or over, So this gives you a lot more control. There's a straw right there. Tampons. I microwave those for 30 seconds, and then I just throw them away. And it confuses everybody on set. And then they leave me alone because they think I'm crazy. No, the tampons are actually notoriously good for being really good steam producers. So if you put that behind a baked potato or an ear of corn, and it's like this perfect width, and you can hide it anywhere, and it'll create steam for quite a bit of time. Whereas a steamer, if you just steam some corn, and digitally you can capture it, but it gives you more time. It'll produce steam for quite a bit of time if it's behind something. Pam, I don't even use Pam. I don't know what's on there. This is a random one. You won't use this, but Arid deodorant spray. If you spray this on blueberries, if someone washes blueberries on set for some reason, the bloom that looks really nice, this will replace the bloom on blueberries and grapes that went missing because they washed it, if you need to replace it. And it smells really bad though. I use Crisco a lot for cereal. If you're trying to if you want to create a bowl of cereal where you're putting every flake into the bowl, like specifically placing each flake, Crisco is better than mashed potatoes because you can stick it in there, it's not going anywhere. Mashed potatoes have their place too. They're the instant mashed potatoes. You see food stylists use that all the time as a filler. But I love Crisco because it gives you that flexibility. Everything sticks to it. Like I was shooting some packaging the other day where everything there was like some wood, and then all the ingredients were on top of the wood to make it look like it was in a crate or something like that. So I had to get everything really vertical, like rice. I had to get rice in a pile. But if you put a little dollop of Crisco, you can place the rice in a mound, and it'll look natural if you do it right. But it'll give you that height that you need. So it's important for a food photographer to know this. It's sort of a double-edged sword because I sometimes have a hard time allowing food stylists to, the relationship I have with the stylists that I work with is they're extremely good at creating the perfect pancake, at creating the perfect cake. But I tend to have the discussion beforehand, are you comfortable with me doing little tweaks to things on set? Which isn't always the case, and I just let them do their thing if not. But I love, because I'm behind the camera, I can see how that lens is affecting the scene. I can see exactly in a second. So I don't have to explain, what needs to be done, what crumb is misaligned. I can just do it. So I don't do a lot of the heavy lifting, but it's important that you at least talk to a food stylist that you're working with and make sure you're on the same page and where things, because if it's a world-class food stylist, I just let them go. But it really depends. I think that covers preparation H. If you need to stick, like a piece of burger falls off the burger patty, you can stick it right back on with preparation H. It's really specific. This is really bizarre. This is another poop freeze thing. I think I put them side by side for a reason. Like, you can buy this stuff and it's really expensive, and I think people use it to spray their face with, and but it makes a really fine mist. So if you really need a really fine spritz, like an incredibly fine spritz on a glass bottle, because when I see a bottle in an image where it's been spritzed to make it look cold, what you don't want, and this is like going to be your homework, is to go find a squirt bottle that has random sized droplets. Because what you'll notice is when you squirt, most squirt bottles on a bottle, it'll either create sort of a splatter if you're too close and just create this weird spray outward, or it'll have sort of the similar sized droplets, whether it's this, which is extremely fine. So I'll use this last. I'll style a bottle. I'll add some droplets with the aqua gel or with glycerin, and then the last, I'll create really fine droplets using that and take a picture. Because it really kind of, you want variation in size on the droplets on a water bottle or anything that you're shooting that you want to look like it was just pulled out of ice. Oh, rubber cement. It's my favorite. Any image on my website that you see that has fire was rubber cement. That grill, if you saw I don't know if you're welcome to go there and take a look. There's a grill shot where it's kind of like if you cut a barbecue in half, and there's a grate with like meat on it and fire and coals and everything. The coals are real, but the actual embers and the gray embers that you get when you barbecue was all flour mixed with the dust at the bottom of the coal bag. So it kind of made it look like it was an active fire. And then I just brushed rubber cement over the top edges exactly where I wanted the fire to go and lit it, and you get like 5 seconds and then it disappears. So it's safe in a studio because it doesn't just keep going and going and going. And you can tell the fire where to go, which is awesome. And you're only going to get usually just one shot out of it. There'll be like a perfect shot where it's at its peak. But it's extremely helpful and safe to use in a studio setting or even a home because it really doesn't last very long. That's pretty much this stuff. Mehuron, I think it's Sinwax. This is what I used. Okay, so the spoons of cereal that you see where a spoon's like clamped above the cereal. This is wax that you can mold and create the perfect droplet of milk. So it's not a plastic mold in this case because it has to go over a spoon. So you have to mold it custom and then create the drop by hand, and then you brush glue on that, on what you've done. And it'll stay like that all day and it'll look fantastic. And you can shoot in natural light because there's no time constraint. It's just going to be there. So when you're dealing with slower shutter speeds as opposed to shooting with a strobe, this is a time where you want to kind of create those splashes if you need to in kind of a fake manner by purchasing some of those coffee splashes or the milk splashes because those won't go anywhere. Nail polish remover is really good for getting labels off. Goo Gone's good for getting the back label off. When you shoot through something, you get rid of this immediately because that'll go right. It'll look ridiculous. And to get all of it off, another trick I learned from Rob Grimm, who's just a fantastic food photographer, is to take some butcher's twine and wrap it a few times around the bottom of a bottle like this, or a wine bottle or a beer bottle. I think it works best with a beer bottle. I've failed a few times at thicker bottles like this, but if you douse it in nail polish remover and if you twist it and then tie it off, and then light it on fire, and then kind of twist it, I like fire, and then twist it a few times, and then plunge it into ice water, this will pop right off in a perfect sphere. So, and why would you need that? Because if you're doing a shot where you have this pouring into a glass, you just clamp this to a stand and you can pour water through this all day. If you have a rigger, he can actually create something where you just get wine. If this is a wine bottle, he can create something where you're circulating wine through this forever. It's just a circulatory. There'll be a glass and then a hole and a nozzle at the bottom of the glass. The glass will be, and it'll just circulate all day. And there's a shot where I did with a beverage, it was like a rhubarb soda, where I had the bottom removed, and I just clamped it and then was able to pour all day and capture a few frames. It just gives you a lot of control. So I know there's a lot of information. There are a few books on food styling out there, which are really good. Dolores Custer is my favorite. She is retired. I'm not sure if the book's in print or not. She's a fantastic food stylist. And this book is like a Bible for me, and I'll reference it quite a bit. Dolores Custer, and I think it's called just Food Styling. I'm not 100% sure. But it can be found. I mean, I found it. It wasn't hard. And it's a great book. And it just covers everything in detail. So you do want to, I can't cover this all in one class, obviously. But I do want to stress the importance of kind of, if you're doing this on your own, understanding it, or at least understanding enough about it to communicate to a food stylist, hey, can you do this, or knowing what options are available. Because the people who are hiring you to do a shoot will be asking, you'll be in meetings together with the stylist, obviously. But to be able to communicate with the food stylist intelligently on set has been really helpful for me. And also, when you're doing food styling, always look at the camera. You want to be styling and propping from lens point of view. So you'll see me when I'm shooting, kind of going like this all the time. And I cannot tell you how many, even prop stylists, food stylists don't do that as much because they're not photographers. So that's why that communication helps, where I'm finishing stuff on set sometimes, because I can look on here and just see, okay, that's not, because how it looks to you, like even right here, and how it's actually translating through the lens to your computer, totally different. So sometimes you just have to take a shot too, and then look at it and make decisions, because it's all about, food photography is all about working the scene and building the quality of the image over time. It's not just about capturing that one moment. There is no, with food, especially if you get good with Photoshop, you'll know you can never capture it in just one, even though that's my goal every time I set out to do it. I can always do better compositing. There's that thrill. That's why I love street photography so much. There's that thrill of the chase and the thrill of capturing that moment, and that's not what I do at all. So it's nice sometimes to just go out and shoot what's going on outside. It's fun, and it makes you, kind of frees you up and makes you a little bit better at this. That's why I always explore other people's photography and non-food photography usually, because it really works its way into my style of shooting. And I have a styling kit. It's extremely complex. This is my drawer kit. I've got one of those wheeling tool chests in the studio, and these are all the drawers pulled out of it. I'm not even sure if you can see the bottom drawer or not. I don't think you can. This is just storage anyways. So this is everything I use just on my end. This isn't even the food stylist. So glue gun's extremely important. I use it quite a bit just for putting glasses and making sure they don't move. You just glue them, and there's museum wax that you can use for that too. And just tools for creating sets, and these blocks are handy to keep stuff at different levels, keep stuff from falling over. A lot of this is the stuff that we just went over in these drawers. There's not much new there, but this is just kind of a look at, I use toothpicks a lot, and T-pins. I use T-pins all the time. You can buy them, I think at Home Depot. I don't know where you get them. I bought them once a long time ago and I haven't run out yet, so I forgot where I got them. And also Joyce Chen scissors. Joyce Chen scissors are like a specific kind of scissors that can take a beating, and they're sharp as all get out. I mean, you can cut branches with these scissors. They're incredibly durable. But they're just good for they're really needle nose kind of scissors, so they can get into different places. And so that's, yeah, and also this putty, the poster putty. If you buy gray, don't buy the blue. That's usually what it comes in, and you can get away with it if you don't see it, but I've had it create color casts on things that are next to it. You can see the blue. So I just get the gray poster stick and putty, and it's good for tons of things. I mean, just anything on set that you can imagine you just need to stick onto something, or prop up, like a spoon. Like if you have a spoon that's not behaving right in that light and you want to twist it, you you just put a little putty behind it and turn it. Yeah, and a level. I have a level on set because if your set's not level, your liquids will not be level. And you do not want to Photoshop. You do not want to retilt liquids inside of glasses in Photoshop, I assure you. Also, when I dress a glass for the set, if the style calls for this treatment, I do have masking tape on set because if I have a clear glass that's going to be filled full of beer, I'll take tape and I'll wrap it around the top of the glass. So you'll have like a ½ inch of space. And then when I spray, I'll get some of the art gloves on and just put my hand in the glass and I'll spray the outside with Dulling spray. And then the outside of that, I'll actually spray it with Crystal Clear, which is made by the same company. And that protects the Dulling spray from being smeared or, so you have to let it dry in between. Dulling spray first, then Krylon Crystal Clear. Not a mandatory step, but it helps. Because when you spray water droplets onto Dulling spray, it dissolves the Dulling spray goes away. It's like you never did it. And then on top, then I start, I let the Crystal Clear dry, and then you can just pull that tape off, and you have this perfect rim for either air to be or the head of the beer, because it wouldn't create condensation where the head of the beer is. So that gives you some control as to where your treatment of this glass to make it look frosty ends. Yeah, I know there's something I'm forgetting. But that's what the book is for. So yeah, instant read thermometer, some other stuff. So this is this Coke shot. And this is kind of a good example I show people of. It incorporates a lot of different things. This right here, so this is meant to be Coke Life, which is Coke's natural beverage. And you see a lot of, it's meant to be served in this barn scene, just kind of a morning dew, kind of really refreshing kind of scene. And this is poop freeze sprayed with light behind it. So I just sprayed the poop freeze in different locations and then composited it later. This is acrylic ice. This is also a glass done with some spritz. You see sort of these different droplets. These are what I really like about, we had enough light to capture some natural water. I love using just water. It looks different, I don't know why. But these are just water droplets. There's a little bit of a blur to them because it's not strobe, but they're just fantastic. They don't have any of the color sort of extruding in a very homogeneous way. They're really kind of crisp. So we were able to capture these two sets of droplets in action. But this is a major composite. I mean, every single one of the caps was a different frame. And I also sprayed poop freeze on the box to make it look like it just came out of an ice box. So the actual box has to be, so you gotta kind of think about what's going on. Why, there has to be a why for everything that's in an image. If there's no why, you get rid of it immediately. Why, I mean, so everything has to be kind of thought out. So I sprayed, this is all poop freeze right here. I just like saying poop freeze. And I even styled the box a little bit. And each one of these had a gold reflector card put behind it. And I got a straw to match the styling of that. But
What's the foam around the straw?
oh, this here?
Yeah.
I used to. Okay, so here's another trick. Photo flow. If you've ever worked in the darkroom, you can buy it in just little, I think Kodak makes it or something. And you get an eyedropper and you just kind of squeeze it, get a little photo flow in there, and then squeeze it into the beverage and kind of continue to push on the eyedropper. And especially in coffee, it works really well. But even in soda, it creates this foam. It creates the bubbles. And photo flow tends to not create that rainbow effect that you could get with soap. You don't have that kind of like synthetic slimy look that you'll get with soap. So it reacts really well with that. And so that was just fortuitous that it came up near the straw. But with ice is kind of a nightmare because every way you tilt it, it just reflects light everywhere. So it takes a while. I arrange the ice in the glass well before I pour the liquid. And I'll get sort of a light reading just on how the ice alone is reacting. And it'll tend to be that you'll be most of the way there. And sometimes you'll actually have to glue the ice together on occasion if you think it's going to float away, but they're pretty heavy. They don't go very far. But if you do have mint in an iced tea, you'll have to glue the mint to the ice because it'll float away when you pour the liquid in. So everything has to be locked down. And then you always want a piece, you tend to usually want a piece of the ice coming above the surface. That's just artistically pleasing. And so it takes a while to kind of get them to cascade like this. That's why the more options you have of the ice cubes, the better. But they're like $50 a cube. So it's like $200 of ice cubes. I think they're a little bit less. They're like 40 maybe. So that, yeah, that just displays a lot of different, and it shows you that you can shoot at f/16, f/20 and still get an atmospheric look by using fog machines or using, or cutting the light back here, which I think I did a little bit. But I used flags like just black foam core all the time to cut light in the background to keep it from, just to add depth. Yeah, and I went over highlight color temperature all the time. Just keep an eye on what color the highlights are. Some people forget that, and they're these weird blue highlights that just don't. Yeah, and I've gone over doubling up the daylight, and I'll actually show you how that appears on film. Another thing I kind of wanted to run over is color rendering index. This is getting sciencey, but if you've ever used a fluorescent light to shoot food, you'll know what I mean. How many have used a fluorescent light as a food or product? They make them, and they're portable and they're handy. And that was my first light, was a fluorescent light, just to practice when I was like 10 years ago. But the way any light, the reason people love natural light is for obvious reasons. It reacts across the spectrum to your camera. It renders the colors incredibly evenly and smoothly. So if you shoot just a color red with different, all the way from dark red to light red, and you put a fluorescent light in front of that, you'll see dips in certain areas of that color where it doesn't render as well. And that's because it just, especially with the CFL lights. Now LED lights have come to a point, I think these are rated, do you know what the rating is on these for CF?
96.
It's 96? I was gonna say 95. 96 makes me happy. Because that's essentially sunlight. You really can't, at that point, this is a window. Now earlier on, in the early days of LED, I think it was
80s.
Yeah, it wasn't as, but one of the reasons I'm just so in love with these products is just the quality of the light. It's astounding, and so I no longer need a window, and nor do I miss having a cloud go over. And if you're going to composite a natural light scene, forget about it, because a cloud goes over, and then you're getting variances and we have started to use these in high-speed cinema, because I have a cinematographer I work with to do motion. And we got this all the way up to some ungodly, I think it was 240 frames a second, and there was still no flicker. And he was blown away. I mean, he's used to using some, very intense lights. Not only was the intensity enough to do 240 frames a second, but there was no flicker. The only time we saw flicker is when we dimmed it halfway, but that's a common thing with any dimmer. When he had it full blast, we were astounded.
Not all LEDs are made alike.
No, and that's the one thing I've noticed is with the, I can't go too far into the science because I look ridiculous. I'm not. But I mean, the way that the power is regulated through these dimmers is amazing. Yeah, I mean, with the dimmer on, I think we got to 120 and no flicker or something, frames a second for high-speed cinema. But I mean, it's hard to look at these. This is not on full power. This is at, what are we at now? Yeah, this is 28%. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was reading it upside down. Probably 82, right? But if you get this close in, it's they're really bright. So I'm gonna. Yeah, so the render, the LEDs being produced by Westcott are really fantastic. I mean, they're, I think, what do they run? A couple, 1,800?
Like 2 mats, 2,000 pounds.
Yeah,
1999.
but they last a long time.
50,000.
A long time. And if you can have, I would pay twice that if I could have just a window with me wherever I went, and that I could roll up into a. I mean, and I would look at probably getting, if you're a food photographer, this was where I would go. Even though I like the strip light, personally, this is my personal preference. I would start with just what is basically a window, and then go from there and add as your style demands it. But this can be used for video, it can be used for stills. I just cannot say enough good things about this. And you can fold it. You can put it under. I've experimented with putting it under plexiglass, under like semi-opaque white plexiglass, and you can light stuff from underneath. And you can wrap these for cinema. You can put them up in the car, above to kind of create some downlight. They're really fantastic. So yeah, I've already gone into light modifiers. This is an example of a pizza shoot. And it's amazing, just looking at this, you don't need a lot of props to create a really intense scene. We were able to mimic the conditions of a brick oven just using 5 bricks. And then I gelled a light coming from the left to be tungsten, and it looked like a fire. Very simple. This is stuff you can do at home on a table. And then this is the bellows system I was telling you about, or not a bellows, but the hood, the shade. It really keeps stuff from hitting the lens. It keeps you from bonking the lens into things. It's really just helpful. But I scrim lights a lot, and I use really downcast or a shallow raking light a lot. Have you guys heard of this product, the floppy cutter? So if you are in a situation where there's too much fill, like if you're in a big natural light situation, I love this because it cuts light. People sometimes forget, they keep thinking about adding lights to a scene to shape the light, but you can actually just, one of the best things you can do to create drama is just cut the top of the light to create, like when you're doing portraits outside, you have somebody holding something above the model, so it creates that sort of dramatic side light, or the Rembrandt lighting. This is just something you can put on a stand, and it not only cuts any pollution coming, like if you're in a restaurant, you have tungsten lights everywhere, and the lighting's a nightmare. This is like your personal studio right here. You just find a good window and an ice light, and then use the floppy cutter to cut out all the extraneous stuff. And then sometimes I'll put a white card where this is to create more neutral fill, and then use the ice light to come in and supplement the window light that's already coming in, and you've got an amazing quality of light right there. Those are fantastic, and you can make them, but the quality of these just lasts forever. They really are well made. So yeah, and this is an example of just light. It's an overhead shot, not something I do quite often, but the light's very low and very intense, so it brings out all the textures. And it did require a little bit of fill. This is splash stuff. But I can go into this. Actually, this is really what I want to discuss. So these are just some random B takes that I've taken over the years. They all have none of them were keepers, and they sort of, I just kind of want to go over what I did and didn't like. So you've got to think about, silverware placement is always a thing for me, like where you put silverware. You'll spend a lot of time just like moving spoons. You're just like, where does it look good, where does it look good? And then you'll know when it looks good. You don't want it just kind of like there. I mean, in theory, first of all, the fork would never be on the right side, so that's dumb. Don't just put stuff somewhere just to look proppy. There has to be a why. It has to make sense. Like that overhead shot, with the meat and all the stuff that was being prepared. I know that's cassoulet being made, and I know how cassoulet is made. So if you photograph something that you're going to prop yourself, like research a little bit and find out why. Would the water be boiling if this wasn't ready yet, or so there's some thought that needs to go into what you're shooting. And the egg just kind of went. Even with the ice light, there is some motion blur you're going to have with the egg. So you want to get the ice light in a lot closer to be able to capture a fairly sharp stream of egg. Otherwise, it kind of looks just kind of messy. And I would have used a floppy cutter on this too, because we had great window light coming from the right, and I did eventually. This is sort of this is as I was working the scene, so this is a stand-in. So you can see all the mistakes. I love using stand-ins because you can see how the light's going to react before you do it. And then once you have the scene ready to go, you just bring in the hero and shoot it. And usually it works. Sometimes you have to redo it. But the one that I do like the chair and the background. It's got an interesting feel and sort of dramatic. It feels like it's coming at you a little bit. But yeah, so that's that. Any questions so far at all before I continue? Okay. I do want to have, we're not going to do a lot of intensive shooting here. This is more for just kind of showing you what we've talked about in practice, so you kind of see. I didn't have the resources to build a full set, obviously, in here, but So this is just sort of this is why I've always there's a multitude of styling mistakes. First of all, with lettuce, you never toss the lettuce like you do in a restaurant. And if you're working with a chef, just tell them to leave. Don't toss. Get it in a squirt bottle. Get the vinaigrette or something and spray it on. But don't spray it on don't spray it while it's on there because you're going to get spray. This is dressing sprayed everywhere, and that's impossible to clean up. So you want to build it from the ground up and kind of think about in stages how you're going to build that. That's why working with food stylists is a really good idea. There was adequate fill, but it gets a little dark in here. You don't want dark and lettuce together. It's just not, shadows and lettuce are not good together. So we worked on that and we continued to build it until we got it and used a big giant fill card. But the backlighting does help. I mean, I'll do it when it calls for it. And when you use backlighting, it's because you want the raking, if you're coming in sort of a 3/4 or lower down, you want, if there's any surface texture that you want to highlight, that's when backlighting looks really good. And you have to fill it in the front or else it'll look dead. And that's kind of what is happening here. This is when chocolate's gone wrong. So this is what I call the hamburger problem. When you see hamburger, the top bun is, like the stuffing of the top bun is usually pulled out so it can sit properly. Can't really do that with this. So there's not a whole lot of ways. Instead of I would have probably made custom marshmallows and cut them in a square. But this is also, chocolate styling is hard. Chocolate is just, it's hard to work with, period. So that's why I use a straw, and I mean, it is a s'more, so it's supposed to be melted. But early in my career, I did a s'mores cookbook, and it was I was so tired of marshmallows and just s'mores. It was fun to work on for sure, but styling s'mores on location, that's hard. Marshmallow you can't. It really grizzled me for later. Yeah, no, and this is about as shallow of a depth of field as I've ever shot. And this was like the second image in a series of like 100 before I got it. It's just, this is another instance. You can use the floppy cutter outside and no light, and it improves your shots dramatically. There's just too much fill. It's just everywhere. This is a style. It's just not my style. So it just depends what you like. I like really committed styles where you just push it in some direction, where it's not just picture of something, because a lot of people can do that. It's either just crazy high key or crazy low key or tons of stuff going on or really composited or so simplistic it's silly. Just something to catch your eye with all the images that are being produced. It's really important to make some sort of statement or at least push your style in a certain direction. And so this was early on, and this has none of my current style indicated in it whatsoever. This was a nightmare. I love this shot because it was just brutal, absolutely brutal. Does anybody know what this is? No. No, and the thing is, it's tasted incredibly good. And so this is the first shot of the series, and we eventually found, I think, something that worked. This is, it's beef or something. See, what I'm trying to stress is that the positioning, not only do you have to think about all these things that I'm going over, but you have to think about, do people even know what it is? Or what, because in fine dining, it's never really obvious what things are because they've been manipulated and so that's why doing overhead shots is usually really good because you can just lay it out for people to sort of absorb instead of trying to get too fancy, which I was trying to do here. And the final worked. I mean, the food's amazing. But it's my job as a photographer to kind of look at this and say, okay, maybe we need to tilt this so the viewer at least, and that's the challenge. I'm a chef, I already know what this is. You have to think about the viewer. Do they know in a one glance or second what this is? In a fine dining, that's really hard to do because there's a lot of different things going on. This is sort of a rustic fine dining. The flavors are really tasty. There's a restaurant in Seattle. And so, yeah, it's really on me to, and the food stylists that you're working with, to sort of shape things in a way that are obvious to the viewer. And sometimes you have to I was working with a private chef to do some images for her website a while back. And she just came to me and she said, this stuff, it just doesn't look good. And I can't tell you how many times you have to photograph stuff that doesn't look good. You're not going to photograph the most beautiful things in the world every single day. Sometimes it's a potato chip or it can be pretty, but you have to make this look amazing. So how do you break up? This is what it is. There's nothing. I decided to angle it and then break it up with the yogurt and the cucumber sauce. And so it's just some competing angles going on. Parsley on top, sauce around, and sometimes that's just as far as you're going to get. I mean, you can't continuously. With food photography, there's a peak, and then that peak kind of tails off, and you kind of get tired, or your eyes get tired, or. So this is all very early stuff for me that I'm not embarrassed to show. It's fine. This is my early beverage work. It's really good, right? But there's something. It's backlit, so I'm already at a disadvantage. I want to show kind of what natural ice does and how opaque it gets when it's in a glass. The acrylic stuff's really good because you can see right through it. And if you boil distilled water a few times and then freeze it, it'll give you a fairly clear look. The reason this gets so opaque is just the way it freezes naturally. But if you can get a really pure water source and boil it, a lot of the oxygen gets out of it, and if you freeze it, it can get pretty clear. So if you're going to use real ice, which is sometimes you have to, if there's a drink that somebody made ice, you want to tell the bartender, this is what we need to do to get this really clear. So if they put a garnish inside of it or something fancy, that's how you do that.
Just the ice was frozen, not the liquid, right?
Just the ice was frozen. But if you drop ice into liquid like that, it'll float to the top like that and become opaque. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across there. Oh, those are my social media. You can follow me on Instagram if you want. I'm on there a lot. Just kind of behind the scenes stuff of sets I have built. It's kind of a fun way to see. There's a lot of really good Instagram pages that show, famous BTS is one of them, that show just behind the scenes shots of all these different, they hand pick, of all these different sets just for that day that they get. And it's a really cool resource. And then I have some behind the scenes stuff with the food shoots that I do. It's kind of a fun way to learn. So I'm going to kind of go over my method in practice and just kind of give you a feel for what these lights can do, because this is a great starting point. Especially with the ice light. I've been using the ice lights for a long time. And I'll kind of show you how I use that in combination with the others and alone. I think we're tethered. Let's try taking a photo here and see what happens. So as a photographer, I'm not totally hung up. I've learned the technical techniques of photography, but just like baking is a very scientific way of cooking where you're measuring stuff and you're worried about ratios and you're worried about, if there's just a little bit extra of this, it's garbage. I'm more of like just a cook taking some mushrooms and sauteing them, adding a little bit of this, a little bit of that, until I build something that's really tasty. So there's different ways to shoot. That's why I don't use light meters. I'm not very scientific about it, but I have done it long enough to where I can get there. It's like listening to a song on the radio and then kind of being able to play it on the guitar or something. You kind of get in tune with it, and it just seems more efficient to me. It's just kind of how I work. Yeah, I think we're done. That's good. Nailed it. Yeah, that's why they pay me the big bucks. So no, I'll take a reference image and then in no time be, and I'm not going to be too, I'll tell you what the camera settings are, but that's not really the whole deal I'm trying. So I'm shooting f/5.6, but only because I don't want you guys behind the serial. So I mean, the environmental concerns affect, like if you're in a restaurant, I shoot much shallower than I do in the studio because I have full control over everything in the studio. But in a restaurant, you might as well just be, they're almost two different jobs. A restaurant, and I'm only good in a restaurant because I'm so used to being in a restaurant. Otherwise, my style would not be compatible with that at all. I mean, I'll shoot f/1.4 in a kitchen and still not have necessarily enough light. And if you're shooting f/1.4 handheld, your depth of field it's hard. Yeah, so I'm going to shoot. I'm at 6.3, and I don't even know what kind of meter. I just set my white balance to daylight because these are daylight balanced, and it gets me there. So, I'll take a base shot where basically what I'm looking to do is like in landscape photography, I just do an exposure where the brightest bright isn't blown out. That's it. and that's my base. And then I work from there. And usually what I'm looking at is food styling, because in some instances this could be good. There just needs to be a spoon. It's just a bowl of cereal. But you won't know just by looking, even necessarily through the lens, what you're looking at. You just need to have it on a screen. In fact, we have a TV like this in the studio that we kind of just wheel around. And so it's nice to just be able to look and just kind of absorb it. Like, what are we looking at here? Taking your time on it. You don't want to rush food photography. So you can see there's two of these together. There's, it's like creating art. So I'd want to move one of those down. And when you're shooting for a cereal company, they'll want a certain amount of inclusions, like a certain amount of these colors, certain amount of these. It's really specific. So you'll have just sheet pans of cereal just spread out, and there'll be food stylists just picking through the best, find the best pieces. It's really it's one of the toughest jobs. And you'll build it. This will be pretty much all Crisco or mashed potatoes or something. You'll be constructing that from the ground up. And then for milk, I usually use heavy cream or glue, or it really depends on the client. They can dictate that a lot. Heavy cream looks pretty good. Yeah, so I mean, there needs to be more fill. There needs to be, some of these are getting dark, and I wouldn't necessarily try and light that. I would put something there so that we're not dealing with it anymore. So it's not necessarily about, a lot can just be done. The camera's just there to take a picture. A lot of it is styling, so that's why I'm trying to impress on you guys to work with a really good food stylist. I actually normally would like a really dark background, but I find this to be a little kind of muddy. Although the green and this green line kind of go together a little bit. It's not, I didn't have room in the airplane for all the props, but we have a huge prop room, so we have the luxury of just going in there and selecting what we need. But with cereal, so let's say we've got this window light, and this is at, what is this at? Yeah, it's at 100%. So this is our window, and I like to side light, but a little bit from the back. I don't like it to, and if you want this to turn into a strip light, you can actually just go like this, because what you're doing is feathering the light, and so you can see the difference in the background exposure. It's the area right behind the bowl. So to the cereal, this looks like a strip light now. It's this wide in the view of the cereal. So you can get a little bit edgier of a light going that direction. You do have to be careful of glare, and that's why I have that hood on. Oh yeah, for sure. That's why I always have that hood on, because I'm doing this a lot. What I would do is I would just create this as a normal fill. We want this to be, also, what is the mood of the shot? Is it morning? And if it's cereal, it's probably morning. So we want a higher key image. This is just too dark and muddy. And so I'm gonna come just to the right of the product, and then I will probably, this would be a larger fill card for sure. But the reason I love these articulating arms so much is because you can just have different sizes of cards already pre-cut for different uses. And sometimes I actually have one card that's a white card that has a hole for the lens for shooting reflective objects. Or even this, if you want to just put a fill card to bounce light up, you can hold it down here, but you can also kind of have one on the lens of the camera kind of tilted towards the light, and it just floods it with light too. But you have to cut a hole for the lens and account for that later. And occasionally what I'll do is you'll notice when this will could potentially act as a floppy cutter. If you want more drama in the cereal, you can use an ice light. I mean, there's obviously a lot of drama here because we don't have the abundance of window light you'd have in some environments like a home. But you can get a black card or the floppy cutter, and you can either use an ice light. Sometimes I'll use both in combination. So if you're looking, let's say for some reason we didn't have enough texture, which I don't think is the case here. But if we wanted more raking light to show off all the texture of the cereal, I would then come in, and I do this as ice cream most often. I'll put barn doors on this, or even this is enough to do the job for sure. Just to come in just off camera right and just bring this in and look through the camera until I see what result I'm getting. So now we have the fill, we have the dramatic light, and then on top of that you can actually cut light from the top to make this appear more of a dramatic light. Sometimes you can get away with just using just the card above, because cutting light from the top is the same as adding it from the side, really, based on your exposure. It's a little bit different, but not too far off. But I use these all the time on set. So yeah, so I mean, it's really just, it's about creating a set from the ground up. I would invest, if you're serious about doing food photography, I would get a couple of sawhorses from Home Depot. I would get a variety of surfaces that you like, that from like old, I mean, Home Depot has some cool tiles. You can get some cool tiles from Home Depot. You can go to reclaimed wood places that have, architectural salvage places are really good for that. And just get some good surfaces, good bowls, and just get some work going with cereal, pancakes, just some different food products. And just kind of take a shot and kind of look at that with your food sauce and say, what can we do to make it better? And you just keep chipping away at it until you finally get to hero state where it's just all working together and all meshing together. This would be good. I would probably flood, get more light on the back. Let's take another shot of that. Can you guys see okay? Are you guys doing all right? Okay. That's the one thing about C-stands is these stands tend to, you can really push C-stands into a set really easily. Let's move this up here. Yeah, there we go. But these are so light, and it's so easy to just, oftentimes I'll do this, just to kind of create that nice. This, however, coming from the back is going to require an enormous amount of fill from the front, which I don't have a white card for, but this is more just theoretical anyways. See, that's another reason you see this. This is good for kind of holding just a card in place, but the reason I love this so much, even though it's overkill, is I don't have to move. This articulating arm can get me anywhere I need to be in a hurry. It's kind of like the extra knuckle on the end of a C-stand. It's like just a little bit of extra flexibility. And then in regards to fill cards, the fill card should really usually be placed opposite of the main light source. So it's reflecting back into what you're doing. Kind of a general rule that helps. So I'll just take a shot of the ice light there. See what that does. That's bright. Highlights are hot. Hot, 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 hot. Hot cereal. That's because of the ice light. You gotta, whenever I add this to it, it really, I mean, that's getting there. So there's definite improvements that can be made, but not within the context of this particular set. There's just no,
The cereal looks a little blurry, so how would you fix that?
yeah. So let me show you some of the tilt shift. When you're dealing with a cereal company, they're going to want to have all the cereal in focus for sure. There's no question. So I would let's shoot f8, let's do f9, and then let's shoot. I tilted the lens forward. Now focusing with tilted lenses is, yeah, it can be hard because you can't see exactly what's going on, and it moves your frame around. So let's recenter this, put this forward, and then we'll take another shot. So that's a little bit sharper, and it's more. And because I tilted it, it's the plane of focus is going. Why is that so blurry? It looks blurry on there, doesn't it?
And the food isn't like, I don't know, the cereal doesn't look right.
To what?
I'm not sure there's that no.
Oh yeah, there's no. I mean, it's a green tablecloth. I mean, yeah, no, but there's a. It is strange. It must be. I wonder if it's the actual. Let me look on my computer. That's funny. Yeah, because it's crazy sharp there. That's 100%. I think it's just the TV playing tricks. But yeah, so this is just more for styling and for taking this knowledge and putting it in a set that's really built, because you'll have all the time and the resources to kind of build. This isn't really as much about set building as just about theory and lighting. But the cereal would look better in an ethereal kind of look. So let's try backlighting it. So you'll see a difference in the, you'll see a dramatic difference in the lighting. See how important a fill card is? I mean, when you do backlighting, you have to have a fill card like about 4 feet high just to get enough wrap. But if you were to do that, it would really be an improvement on it. Yeah, that's what that's what the challenge is. So, you know, I think with this, where I would push it is I would push for, I would actually put this directly behind the serial to make it look like the window's right behind the serial, and just flood it with like a 5 foot tall fill card, and just flood the whole scene with light. And then that would create more ethereal. But let me try the bottle. I think the bottle is really going to give you an example of the power of these two lights. And always wipe down your bottles. This is more of a, don't do this. So when I shoot a bottle, I'm shooting, let's do this right. So you'll want to have some sort of diffusion or a second light. Now when you have a reflective surface, you want any reflectors or lights to be well behind the bottle. Because when you look at a bottle from the front, it has to be this far back for it to appear to be just on the right of it. So anything reflective, so if you want to have a nice edge light to both sides of your glass, you want it really further behind than you would think. And then this, I'm going to have this do double duty as sort of a side light and also a backlight. See, I hope I can get my camera. We just disconnected, but the thing I love about ice lights is they're portable. So we'll just do that. Okay. So 85, I may be in your lap if I do that 85. Let's just try it over here, be easier. All right, here we go. Yeah, that's a place called Percy's in Seattle, and it's a really cool bar, but they hand make all of their, doing bottle photography is a really involved process, and I don't have quite a few tools going to this, and I can explain them, but this is sort of a quick kind of get it at home. So I'm going to have this on the right side. And this could be, ideally this would be just a white card. But this will be behind. And then I'm going to turn this, I'm going to move this over to the left here. Any other questions? This will be blocking a lot of your views, but I'll show you this. So this is going to be doing double duty as sort of adding some sparkle to the liquid, but also creating that edge light a little bit. This will be working and hitting this as an edge light, but this will also wrap around a little bit. And then you could put the polarizing gel on this ice light and use it as a fill. Which I can kind of do here. Let's see how this looks. This is going to be really ragtag, but yeah, the light's totally in the frame. Let's turn that up. Let's just get an exposure. Yeah, this is involved. All right, let's break this apart. So you see this highlight here? This is what you don't want. This is why having the polarizing gel, and maybe even buying, I mean, if you get one of the smaller units, you can actually put a polarizing gel on one of these. They just don't get as big as this is. That's really, you want that soft light or a polarizing gel to make this disappear so that this just shines. And the highlights here are really, really intense on the left and the right, which a polarizer will take care of to an extent. But a lot of it's just about balancing your lights. It's about having the right ratio. And the right exposure. I can really show you what I'm doing. This is more about something you want to experiment in your own time using these techniques. But so for a bottle, you're going to have the bottle right here, cleaned, ready to go. In my style, I like to have this label kind of glowing, and I like to have two nice white lines on each side of it, and then the liquid showing what it is. You don't want this dark. You don't want this blowing out. The best way to achieve that is to have either a strip light or this light as your key, kind of right there. Maybe move back a little bit and just look. See that highlight there? I don't know if you guys can see that. In the middle you can see it. But you kind of work, you look at where camera angle is going to be and then move the light back further into the studio or your home space until it reaches the edge of the bottle. You don't want the darker shade of the bottle and then a white stripe.
You're feathering the light.
To an extent, yeah. But this is more about the reflection angle. This is a pretty sharp light. We're almost there. But you can see how far back you have to get just to have it kind of, you want this to glance off at a perfect angle to your eye. And then what you could do from that point is put a white card right here. And then you'll look at that and you'll see, do you guys kind of see that in the middle? Yeah. This is going to be a bigger white card, obviously. But you're going to come in, you're just going to look at it, and you're going to bring it back all the way to about here. Now what you see is you see the highlight kind of going 2/3 of the way down the bottle and then ending. So that means you'll have to kind of go like, you'll have to get a white card and kind of angle it. See how it goes down further now? You'll want to kind of bend it until you see that you're getting all the way to the base of the bottle. Anytime you're doing bottle photography, it's going to be like 4 shots at least. I mean, you can get this in really good in 1 shot, but if you're going to shoot this, ideally I would have like a silver card, maybe, because it's water. Water is very difficult to shoot. Anything with some transparency or full transparency is going to be difficult with highlights. So it's really just a matter of getting like a really soft, your background is really going to be what you're going to choose for this. Your background is going to go right through the water. So whatever your background is going to be, because you can't fake it like Coke where you put like a gold card behind it. With water, it's all going to show. There's no hiding. So choose like a nice white paneling or white fence or white outdoors kind of look, like a picnic table, because there's no getting around what this is. So in this space, it's a challenge because I'm shooting the TV post or whatever's going to be in there. And you can't put something behind it because it'll just be too obvious. The truth with this thin of a liquid is you're going to see whatever the background is. So you have to choose wisely. It can't be blue. I mean, maybe it could be blue with water. But you do have to make very clear decisions on what, no pun intended, what you're going to choose as a background because this is going to be showing everywhere. But the goal of this is to really show you how to get the highlights. So what I would do is I would put a polarizing gel and tape it over this, put it up to full power, and then basically just bring it down until you see the light of the oh, there we go. So until you see it hit the Perrier logo, and then take a picture. You don't need it to go down further than this. All you're looking to do, and with a polarizing gel and having a polarizer on your camera, you can twist it to where it all disappears, and all you're going to see is a glow. It looks awesome. And then so you have your 2 highlights, your background shining through the water, and then your 2 strips on each side. Sometimes if you're in a pinch, you can actually use this to create your strips. So you can use this this makes really nice strips if you have 2 ice lights. I've done it where I've just had 2 ice lights standing up like this. That's it. It looks really cool. I hope you got something out of it, if not just to get poop freeze. They're going to have a run on it now. They're going to be calling it. But I really appreciate you guys coming, and hopefully you guys can at least take this and then when you're in a proper photography setting to really kind of take some ideas and just kind of add to what you're already doing. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.